All right, and we are live. We're back again for open office hours. If you've joined us before, you can see that I'm actually in a different spot than usual. I'm actually back in the office, so is Andrew. It's been nice to get back into our space in Green Bay, downtown Green Bay, and I'm actually in the studio, so we're excited to do some awesome video stuff now that we're back here. And just looking forward to helping you all out today. So if anybody has any questions as we get started today, you can send them in the chat there, and we'll be able to answer live for you. If you want to share your screen, you can actually, in the chat, we'll send you a link, and then you can join us on the call, and we can walk through your problem, walk through your screen, stuff like that. But today, if you have any questions about, if you're a founder, if you work on a product team, like you're a designer or developer, so if you have any questions about projects you're working on, we're here to help and help you get unstuck and reach your goals this week. So, but before we get started, my name's Jacob. I'm the marketing and brand manager at Headway, and I help clients like this and all other live streams. It just has been a good time to help folks in the community reach their goals and grow in their career. And that's enough about me. I'll hand it over to Andrew, and he can intro himself before we jump into today's questions.
Thanks, Jacob. My name is Andrew. As you can see on the screen, I'm a partner and CEO at Headway, and based out of Green Bay. I'm out of the office, as Jacob mentioned as well. So we're here in our HQ. For those who aren't familiar with Headway, we are a hybrid company. So we have a good group of folks here locally in Green Bay, Northeast Wisconsin, and the rest of folks remote throughout the U.S. So it's kind of a little background on us. But yeah, I'm excited to answer some of these questions. I know Jacob gathered a few from Reddit and from the internet that can help talk more about our perspectives and that sort of thing. But as always, welcome to new questions and things that come up as we go.
Awesome. All right. Well, we can jump into this first question. And this question, the person asks, how do you know that you validated your MVP, your minimum viable product? How metrics could be used to identify that MVP has been validated? They share, I know that sales is a good parameter, but sometimes our product isn't payable yet. We offer just a limited version for free, and the revenue is expected to come from ads or future partnerships when we get enough frequent users. And in that case, although user visits and recurrence could be parameters, I think other indicatives could also be used. What do you think about when it comes to metrics for your MVP?
Yeah, this is a good question, and one that we get a lot. Let me pull up kind of how we think about validating ideas and just a framework that we've used for understanding metrics and seeing what people will tell us one thing in interviews, but then when we give them the ability, how do they actually react and how do they respond? And so we use, just to talk about it a little bit before or as I'm pulling it up, is the Pirate Model of Startup Metrics by Dave McClure, who was previously with 500 Startups. And just one second, let me pull it. It essentially goes through, an engagement funnel of your startup. So everything from awareness, I mean, that's more, as your startup grows. So we usually omit it because no one's really going to know your startup by name, day one. You're really going to be focusing on acquisition. So, sorry, still pulling it up here. Here we go. All right, and this was from a talk that that I gave at Startup Wisconsin and a few other times, really. But we like to think about it, measuring your validation and traction. We like to think like a pirate, and that's this acronym. That's R. And really that stands for awareness. So is your brand recognizable within your target audience? Does your reputation precede you? Acquisition, obtaining new customers that sign up through early adopter forums, beta lists, newsletters. Really, this is focusing on messaging and also focusing on channels a lot. So if you're doing ads or outbound or acquiring early stage customers that way, it gives you an understanding of kind of channel and message fit, where they're seeing a value proposition on their on your landing page, and they're choosing to move forward and sign up for one of those things. Activation. So once obtained, your customers create an account, do they reach their aha moment? And so for a lot of companies that we work with and startups and as we're creating new products, the act of creating an account, we wouldn't consider anybody activated, right? They have an account, but they haven't started to activate themselves on the platform. So we usually look for something that's going to include their commitment to filling out their profile, to then setting availability, to doing certain actions that gives us more confidence that they're actually taking those steps and investing in what the value prop has been communicated on the landing page. The next thing that you mentioned, is retention. So are customers coming back? How much are they coming back? What features are most used? What things are never touched? Referrals. Are your customers creating customers for you? Are you creating viral loops? And this is a good way to decrease your acquisition costs, is just by having a remarkable product. There's lots of books and things out there that talk about being remarkable in a space, but all definitely aligned around the value you're creating for somebody. And then revenue, are people paying for it? So in your case, you're saying revenues at the end, and in some cases with the enterprise products we work with, revenues up front, and we try to do pre-sales, and you're recognizing that that's a challenge. So as we think about, your product being a freemium, how might you capture this data, for acquisition? So click-through rates, landing page conversion rates, names, emails, phone numbers. You're having conversations with people. How can you start to think through and get benchmarks for your industry? And that'll give you a good idea, of top of funnel activity, if you can find benchmarks on, cost per click, industry trends, or things where you're looking and seeing what's the average for the platform, what's maybe the average in the industry, and see how you're shoring up to other businesses that are real in the marketplace. And that gives you a good idea of, are you reaching your customer there? Are you identifying them? Is your messaging clear, and the value that you can provide? Activation. So here early on, just to look back at your question, your product's not payable yet. But yeah, are people giving you data? Will they give you survey information? Will they fill out their profile? Will they actually give you something that's going to make it more valuable for your platform? So oftentimes what we try to tell folks as you're looking at potential ads or placement is to really dig into those, really dig into the details of how people buy ads and what they're paying for it, as a way to try and figure out your pricing model. Because some people think, oh, it's easy just to sell ads, but most often ads aren't really viable for any company unless you have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of users, just based on how people typically buy ads. They're buying based on 1,000 impressions, and if you only have 1,000 users that are coming back once a week, you're only going to have 4,000 impressions your entire month. And an average, CPM, or cost per 1,000 impressions, is going to be super low. I mean, it might be $5. You might have $20 of ad revenue in a given month just based on your low amount of users. So figuring out, are you more valuable than that? Are you not? And you almost are starting to serve another customer, where you're trying to give them an outcome where, you're telling an advertiser, just like you did in this acquisition phase, that you're going to bring them more business, more conversions. You're trying to deliver some business value for them. Otherwise they're going to place an ad 1 month and then they're going to leave, right? And they won't be back. I would also look for, referrals and as a way to track if you have a free product. So, we mentioned retention. If you have an existing product that actually can complete the loop, retention's really good for you to be able to dig into. But making sure that you have some sort of virality to your product. And this specific talk and these recommendations were more about pre-product and kind of a mechanism to deliver value for folks early on. So understanding if people will share, if you're let's say you're doing a customer interview with somebody, will they give other people you should talk to? Hey, who do you know who's struggling with this? And that often can be an indicator of, one, how credible they think you are, and that they trust you once they've had a conversation with you, and then two, that you're solving something valuable that they know other people have that they know. So same thing inside of surveys, asking for that. So oftentimes, validating your MVP, like even products that have been around for 10 years can become invalidated over time, right? So like you look at like MySpace, you look at Friendster, you look at companies that have come and gone and died. There's a momentary fit with a customer, and that's why it's so important that you continue to learn and continue to go through feedback loops so that you keep increasing with the expectations of your customers. Your value increases. So I would say um, really validating the pull, and this is something that we've been looking into a lot recently, and really didn't know what to call it, but we do a lot of value proposition testing, and I'll link this out to folks, but there is Peter Denton, who leads product at a venture studio called Pioneer Square Labs. Just one sec, let me update it. Has an article called Product Market Pull that I think is super valuable. So the complete guide to product market pull, and this is something that we've seen as well. He's kind of put a name to it, but really, like, rather than validating, you're looking for a market confirmation that a problem exists, that your hypothesis is true, that people value what you're trying to solve, and they're willing to take action. There's a signal, right? And that's that acquisition. You're able to acquire people on a landing page. They're going to sign up and create a profile, or really like giving you some signal with their action and their steps. And then a clear articulation of who it fits and why. And so that gets down to more of the channel dynamics we talked about, where you're trying to figure out where are our customers, where can we find them, can we bring them through this funnel. And so we'll link this out, but some really good frameworks and questions here, understanding of all these people, who's responding the highest, who's resonating the most. And so validation, is really just trying to take them through that process. And oftentimes, you might find out that the problem is validated, but the solution that you put forward isn't, right? And so then you need to really figure out, okay, if an app's not the answer, or this marketplace isn't the answer, maybe it's a newsletter, maybe it's a service, maybe it's something else, and be open to change that. There's different levels of validation. One is the problem you're solving, two is kind of the customer that it's for, and then three is, are we solving it the right way that kind of gets them to come back and gets them to act? So I'll drop that link here as well for folks. A really, really good read.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks really cool. I have to dig into it myself, actually. That sounds awesome. Well, thanks, Andrew. It was a great answer. And I know it's something we've been thinking about, is like getting that. We have another video that walks through that pirate model that Andrew had shared before on our YouTube channel. I believe it. I can't remember the title of the video, but we'll link it up and we'll put it in the chat there. I think it's like launching your startup without developers, I think is the one, like using no code, and what are the principles of validating your idea before you even just go further with no code, but and how no code can help you validate it too. So be sure to check it out. But I know we'll have to work on getting like a mini series or a blog post all around the pirate model, just so it's a little more digestible too. So awesome. I think we can jump to this next question. I thought it was an interesting one because it's kind of, we'll put you, Andrew, in the frame of mind of when you started Headway, because this person is actually asking about starting their own kind of design development agency. So the person asked, starting my own business, what to pay attention to? I'd like to start my own business on mobile and app development. I have a few years of experience working in the market, and I'm thinking whether it's the right time to go on my own. Could you give some advice on what I need to be aware of before I proceed, and what challenges I might face, what skills I need to succeed in, etc.? Thanks for your comments. Yeah, so maybe in retrospective, what were some of your biggest key learnings, Andrew, starting an agency, especially within like software creation?
Yeah, that it's a loaded question, right? There's a lot of different angles you could come at it from. I think the biggest thing, for you to consider is like, why do you want to do it, right? And like when we started Headway, thinking back to John, Eric, and I, and Chris, who was one of our partners early on, we had all been a part of startups and been a part of companies that try to create businesses based on software. And for us, like the value wasn't just offering a craft of design that was really well, or development that was really well crafted, or even product strategy, but really like trying to capture the impact that an entrepreneur was trying to make and how we could use those skills to elevate what they did, right? And so at Headway, you won't see us try to compete with companies on the lowest cost development or the lowest cost design or the lowest cost product strategy. What we really try to do, and where our focus is like owning a problem alongside a team. And so I would say as you're starting your mobile and app development, it's, what do you want to be known for? What work do you really enjoy? And where do you think you can out deliver based on what's out in the market? Because if you just wanted to do, let's say, React development, or React Native development, and that's all you did, React Native mobile development, you would go up against anyone who's doing React Native mobile development. So you have to think about your expertise, and there's a really good book called The Business of Expertise by David C. Baker that goes into like this crosshairs positioning where you have verticals. So you could be serving like financial technology, and you could have a horizontal, which could be an overall competency of business, or it could just be, React Native development. So you could be a company who focuses on React Native development and focuses on financial technology. And you could really start to develop expertise in there by understanding compliance within financial technology and how you overcome that with React Native. You could understand, really empathize and show your customers how much you understand all the processes and compliance and things that they need to adhere to. And then you could start to not only create a service around that, which is your offering, you could start to create componentized offerings that was like built-in PCI compliance or built-in compliance. You could start to sell productized versions of that to just financial technology. And so I think like when you're starting your own business, like what do you want to be known for? What's the impact you want to make? How are you going to be different and add more value than what's out there in the market today? And so I think, that's only something you can answer, and it's different for everybody. Some people really want to compete on craft and be the best or the fastest or the most cost effective, or, it could be being a, rather than being an onshore US team, you could have a desire to be a global team that doesn't, have boundaries, and you can charge less because of the national or the global market. So it really depends on, what you want to be known for. And then I think from there, like a big step for Headway is just figuring out what we believe together and putting our principles down on paper and arguing, hey, what should be a principle, what's a given, what's not. And over time, those have honed into our core values. But I think, there's lots of challenges that, as you start to face. And Headway was founded, we started Headway not, we bootstrapped essentially. So as a consulting company, we went and sold our first few engagements before we were all full-time and started. We all worked our own jobs, and we worked on, creating the Headway website and what we believed in and who we thought our customers were and how we might serve them better, all before we were to leave our job. And then we took that message and we tried selling it to founders and selling it to teams and trying to figure out, like, does the market want this? And as we started to sell, we figured out plans to actually move away from our existing full-time jobs that we were all at into starting Headway. And really, once you get the first customer, the question is, well, how do we get the second, right? And then how do we get to 10? And then who's going to do that? And so your problems will start to reveal themselves as you go. Like day one, it's more of like, why are you doing what you're doing? And then as you move into it, once you get your first customer and you align with them, how do you continue to get more customers? It's where marketing comes in. It's where sales comes in. It's where your messaging and positioning is going to come in even more. And those things are never done. They're a checklist, but the milestones are always moving, right? The marker is always moving. And as a business and as a service business, you can morph into whatever you want to be, right? But as a product, and the products we build, they're much more rigid. And so you kind of have flexibility being, a service-based company to have more time to figure it out.
Awesome. Yeah, it makes me think about, it makes me also think about just how, like, I think a lot of people, like, they want to start planning like the big picture, like they want to build a team, they want to do all this stuff. But I think the most important thing is, as you're adding more and more people to your team, or if you're just starting, making sure that the work is good. Because if your work isn't good, it's hard to sell. And like if you have really happy customers, they're gonna have referrals, they're gonna do that. And so I think making sure you're focusing on doing really good work and serving your customers really well. like Andrew was saying, the problems will kind of reveal themselves as you're growing instead of just assuming that you're going to have all these problems. Just, focus like 1 quarter at a time, 1 year at a time. Don't try to like get too far ahead of yourself and or grow too fast, because that can be hard too. That can be a growing pains of growing too fast. Can actually hurt you, because if your quality of your service suffers because you didn't prepare your team well enough, and you're not and your team isn't aligned, like Andrew's kind of saying, talking about core values and making sure everyone follows those, lives and breathes those, call each other out when they're not following those values. I think it's super important to focus on doing good work. Everyone's aligned, and not trying to get ahead of yourself on what problems you might be facing. Just making sure you're focused on the problems that are important right now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
One thing just to add to that made me think is this article by Phil Libin, who was the CEO of Evernote, has exited. He now has a venture studio called All Turtles. And he was talking about this rule of, the 3 and 10. So essentially, when you go from one person as being a sole founder to 3, it's different. When it's just you, you know what you're doing. When you have 3 people, you have to rethink how you're doing everything, like the systems break. And when you're 10 people, it all changes again. It's just constant evolution. So I think right now it's figuring out, for you, and kind of tying into Siat's question here, figuring out when the right time is for you. And I think like to go out on your own and freelancing, you have the benefit of moonlighting, depending on your family situation. Obviously, like some people are in, have more time constraints than others. But if you're able to really feather those in, rather than do a hard cutover right away, you're going to have much less stress. You might have to put in more time, but you'll have less stress around meeting your capability or meeting your financial obligations. So I would say, like, going out on your own freelancing, you should be thinking about building up a book of business while you're at your current job, and then evolving into it, versus a hard cutover with no customers, and now you have to figure out, like, who do I sell to, how do I sell to them, what is sales for a lot of people. I didn't start in sales, and most people that are starting agencies aren't salespeople, right? They're figuring out like how to talk about what they do, and how it's different than what's in the market. And so I think the more you can do that as you go, low risk, it also gives you the right to say no to people that aren't the right fit. We talked a lot about principles and figuring out who are the right fits for your companies or for your services, and sometimes the technology is a fit, right? Back to the example of React Native, but maybe how the person works or how they value you in technology, or maybe how they want you to scope things, right? Do you want to be fixed bid, fixed scope, fixed timeline, or are you looking for somebody who's really open to rolling with customer feedback and open to changing things as things change? Are you looking for someone to be right, or like to do it right? I think by not doing that hard jump cut, unless you have business, gives you the opportunity to be more selective inside of your agencies.
Awesome. Pete Bernardo is actually tuning in. He says hello. I shared, and for everyone else watching, I shared the link in the chat to the podcast. Actually, he's been on two podcasts, correct? 2 of our episodes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I shared the link to the latest one, but you can hear about Pete's story in there. I did ask Pete if he's watching still. We'd love to know how things are going for him at Punch List and with his team. And Pete, if you want to hop on and chat about how things are going, we'd love to just say hello, and we can invite you to the stream and you can say hi, but no pressure though. You don't have to if you don't want to. Well, awesome. While we wait for any more responses or more questions, actually, Siad actually asked a question kind of in reference to starting their own business, but like more freelance type perspective, and just how do you know the right time and what would you suggest for offering services? And I think timing is kind of like, it's personal. Like, there are people that I know that have just jumped and they've figured it out. Like, there's, it's kind of like just jump off the cliff and hopefully the parachute happens, right? As you go down. But then there's people that like, they basically build their business while they're working full time. And when they basically are making as much money working 10 to 20 hours per week on top of their normal job, and their salary is equal, then they jump, because they're like, hey, I'm making as much as I was before, or I know that if I spend 50 to 100% more time on this, I can make just as much money, if not more, than what I was before. So that's what they usually do. That's what I've heard is like that's the least risky way to do that, is to build up your customer base while you're working full time. And I think that can be especially important, if you're, if you have a family, if you're living alone, that's definitely less risky. But if you have a family that relies on you, that might be the smarter way to do it. But I mean, yeah, everyone's story can be unique. There's definitely some crazy stories of people just doing it, getting really lucky and going. But the less risky way is building up that customer base. So, all right. Well, I can jump into this next question. And they're asking, should we invest in a mobile app or a web app? So they share, hi, me and my friends are building a chat app for university students. However, we're unsure what's the best thing for our startup to do in this specific scenario. We're still in an early stage where we want to validate the service. The chat app, as a web app, will not have notifications, so you don't know if someone has messaged you or replied until you go back in to check. We can build a React Native app, fully mobile, that does do notifications. However, it'll take 40 to 50% longer and more expensive. And we don't have any time pressure. We can do emails for notifications, but it's not clean. So they're asking, is the best way of lean agile startups in this case to do the web app, or that won't have the important features, but it's easier to develop, or spend more time on the mobile app for even though the idea isn't fully validated. So I guess they want to know, like, where should you place your efforts to get the best results, like with the MVP, mobile or desktop or at web app.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, depending on your constraints from a budget standpoint, one tool that we've used is this chat messaging feature where we've rolled it into apps that it's not necessary for their apps to be entirely custom. And so this is often a good way to validate a feature, is to pay, someone that's a service that can kind of plug in, and, you could launch your app via, we've created progressive web apps with this. We've created mobile applications with this too. I think in general, like, PWAs are going to be faster for you to iterate, given the constraints of the Apple approval process and Google, and supporting both, and the whole testing process there. So I think in general, it's more of an option. We actually are using, some visual development tools right now for some projects that we're on. And, one very interesting story is we're using, on one mobile project right now, we had a existing team spun up essentially to create a custom mobile development mobile platform. And our product team and design team was building something with visual development as a way to learn while we were building the full scalable version. And we've cut off the scalable version of our product, the more bespoke custom code from the engagement, and are focusing only on this visual development tool for apps that are built, because it's going to allow us to iterate much faster. It's going to allow us to have both a web and mobile presence, and really focus on learning for the startup, which is the biggest thing, versus getting one polished version out there that is going to take a lot of time to iterate and change. And so I would recommend, even going further from PWA to visual development tools like Adalo, or like Bravo apps, or something like that helps you learn early on, but also gives you the database structure, the scalability for you to have a fairly long runway, depending on what your application does, to learn the most from your users, which is where all the value comes. So an example, I'm just trying to look here.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say definitely PWA. You could also leverage other platforms that would do push notifications, like Intercom can do some push notifications. Integrating with a PWA and Firebase could do some push notifications. There's other tools out there that'll give you the functionality without, it being 100% native.
Awesome. Well, cool. Looks like Siat has a question kind of about I was asking for some more clarification. Asking about takes on designing for seniors and handling situations in which you sell your product to a user that is not the final consumer. Like, let's see, the next one was like buying items for seniors instead of the seniors buying the items themselves. Interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a contextual example of that.
Yeah, I think in this case, you would want to still conduct all of your, you kind of have two different personas. You have like a user persona, who's the person who's going to use and benefit from whatever tool you're building. And you have the buyer persona, which might be a family member, a son or daughter, maybe a spouse, who's going to buy something. I'm trying to think of, an aging senior scenario where they wouldn't make decision themselves or wouldn't be able to. You would want to focus on their use case and make the usability focused on them, but then the buying cycle, the messaging you're using, all focused on who's going to be purchasing that for them, right? In the cases, it sounds like it may not always be, yeah, exactly. You just clarified, like parents buying for babies. Yeah, so you're really answering to the one of them's use case, the other one is like a buying case, right? And so you kind of have these two different personas that you need to tackle. But all of your design process, your workflow, anything that involves, serving that end user should be done with them still. Anything that involves, how people buy now, understanding their buying process, what other competitors are, what decisions they have to make, what are their anxieties. A lot of that research should be done for the buyer themselves or those personas. So just thinking about it where you're creating the app for somebody, but you're selling it to somebody else. And I think that's very similar, even if you're a B2B2C product where, you're offering it as let's say you're offering this white label service to a bank, that bank is then offering it to, the person who's borrowing money. So you have to do the research at both levels in order to really design the right thing and also create the right messaging that resonates with each one of those.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a great question. Thanks, Siat. All right, I'm going to jump to this next one. If anyone watching has a question for us, be sure to drop it in the chat and we'll answer it. We can share your screen. We can actually invite you to the call and you can walk through your problem if you want or your question. We're happy to answer it for you. So this other one here, so they share, I got my first paying customers, what to do next. So I have a startup with 10K MAU, and I recently launched a premium tier. I got a few paying customers, but I'm confused on how to get more. I obviously understand that I could try to drive more users to my website, but the problem is that my premium conversions are pretty low. I guess the best thing to do would be to improve my website so that more people convert. But the problem is that I have no idea what to work on to achieve that. Do you have any advice? Thanks.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, one of the places, it sounds like you're not, so you have 10,000 monthly active users, right? And you have low people signing up for premium tiers, kind of a few different ways you could approach it. So one would definitely be to reach out to people who upgraded to the premium tier and understand, why they did, right? What resonated with them to the point where they decided to then upgrade, what got them over the hump of just staying free to going premium. I would also do some interviews with people who aren't monthly or who aren't paying already and just seeing like, hey, have you seen this offer? Are you aware of it? Why don't you think it's the right fit? Or like what apprehension do you have? And then try to figure out like, how would you change the copy in your app or the workflow in your app to answer to those anxieties that people have or the doubts they have about it? Like, hey, will this be around in 3 months? Like, hey, I just signed up for it. I don't know how well it solves it. So then it would give you ideas of how you need to change your messaging and maybe get some of the people you talk to that are on the premium tier, get those testimonials out in front of them and say like, because they upgraded to premium, here's the evolution or who they were able to become, and start giving you some ideas. I would also encourage you to get some sort of notification or nudge system in place where you're starting to automate some of the follow-up around upgrading to premium and after a certain period of time, let's say someone became a user today and the call to action is for them to update within a week or 2 weeks, could you keep selling and create a funnel, essentially a drip campaign that would continuously remind them of the value they get and serve that same content you're serving in the app that talks about the success stories of people, maybe interviews with some of the members that are in the premium tier, that keeps it front of mind? Because I know for a lot of users that are in free, you could see the offer once when you first sign up and get a good amount of value from the free process, but not even be given more opportunities to upgrade. So you might not even know what you're missing in that perspective. And I think all of those things happen inside of your app and can inform what happened on your landing page. Like those testimonials you have around upgrading to premium could make their way to the landing page and to your website as well. So when you drive more people there, that they would do that. Also, the funnel we mentioned, let me just pull up an example. If I can find it. The funnel we mentioned before is quite literally a funnel that we use as we think about it's quite literally a funnel that we think about engaging users. And so when you get tracking and instrumentation on your app where you understand what people are doing and where they're falling off, you can start to create messages. And we use Intercom, we've used Amplitude, we've used Mixpanel to try and capture all of these events. Segment is a good one that kind of sends to all of the different platforms. But you could essentially say, give me somebody who's logged in, but their last, or who has logged in and added a home, and their last activity was was a week ago. How do you nudge them automatically to become, to come back into the platform? Or as you have new features and functionality, like how do you start to re-engage them? And you can use some of these triggers in your app and some of the data that they're giving you to figure out like where the right touch points are to be able to re-engage them. And you can automate this. So using Intercom series or even Intercom's just campaigns, you can start to automate follow-up with your customers. So it becomes on autopilot, and you can start to measure these metrics. And we went through this in another video, but there's a process called Lean UX that takes essentially these same metrics and say, hey, how do I increase my retention? Or how do I increase, let's say, my referral? So here, those that are subscribed to a monthly plan, and it puts you in the mindset of, okay, if this is the goal to increase from, let's say, 2% to 10%, what value would we need to provide, and how would we get the information we need to know how to nudge people from the free tier into this? Like this often could result in all of those notifications we talked about. It could also be something that creates a new opportunity for you, and realize that, hey, the solution we have isn't really that valuable. We need to figure out a better way. We need to go talk to our customers and figure out what else are they using that's getting them to this substitute or competitor, that we can augment our product and really start to think about how we elevate the value it provides so that people see that premium value in it. And so that's kind of another way that you can think about where to focus in your product.
Well, awesome. I think that was great. I don't think we have any more questions today, unless someone else here on YouTube has a question for us. But otherwise, I think we can start to end the broadcast. But before we leave, we just want to share some events that we have coming up. I just need to share my screen. All right, here we go. Whoops. All right, so later this month, we have Tim from our team talking about getting started with Elixir for JavaScript developers. So if you are a JavaScript developer and you're kind of curious about Elixir, Tim's going to walk through what is Elixir like versus JavaScript? What are kind of the relative concepts and how you can apply what you know about JavaScript to Elixir so you can start kind of building some things in Elixir and get started. So that'll be a really great conversation. The next day in May on the 20th, we have a conversation with Chris Ewell, the co-founder and CEO at Kinetic. So Ryan and I will be talking to Chris. I'm pretty sure they're going to dive into how he kind of validated the idea, the problem that he was trying to solve in a concierge type approach, and then over time started like figuring out how to create a product with that. So it'll be a really good conversation. And then on the 25th, Katie from the design team will be talking about guiding design with product strategy. So what are some of the elements of product strategy you can use as you're creating UX and UI in the design process? So that'll be a great conversation as well. And as always, too, if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, you'll be able to see these things are coming up as a live stream. So you can either register on our website or you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then also on our website and YouTube channel, we have a big library of content from the past. Like Andrew and I usually bring up videos or conversations from previous videos. And so be sure to check out our whole library, whether it's on our website or on our channel here. Yeah, otherwise, the only thing I wanted to share was that we are, I can add Andrew back in. We are hiring here at Headway. So if we're looking for senior designers, we're looking for developers, even product strategists. So if you're looking for a new opportunity or a change of pace in your career, we'd love to hear from you and apply. So head to headway.io/careers, or just head to our website and you'll see the careers page under company. So yeah, so if you're interested, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you know somebody that's like looking for work or looking for a change of pace in their career or a new opportunity, we'd love to hear from them too. So be sure to share it, and we appreciate that. So I don't have anything else to share. Andrew, any other closing thoughts for today before we kind of end the stream?
I don't. Yeah, if anyone has additional questions, we always are open via email as well. If you want to direct those to ahoy@headway.io. Open to that, but appreciate everybody for taking the time. And yeah, hopefully we were able to add some insight into how we would approach some of those same problems.
Yeah. I just want to note, Ayush was asking if we're hiring outside of the USA, and unfortunately, we are not. It's not something that we're able to do right now. So, just in the United States for now. We'll see. We'll see maybe someday. So, awesome. Well, thanks everyone, and have a great week.